tuned for the Joan Quinn Profiles. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, LA Style, and Detour magazines, Joan covered the social set, the Hollywood hotshots, the international art scene, the mysteries of food, the excitement of travel, and the fabulous world of fashion. Joan continues to find creative people on the cutting edge who make things happen. Here's Joan Agajanian Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Waiting to be profiled are writer Paul Alexander and author Rodney Vance. Writer-director Paul Alexander was born and raised in Birmingham, Alabama. He graduated from the University of Alabama. He earned an MA in the Writers' Workshop at the University of Iowa, and he was a former editor for Time, reporter for Time, a journalist who had his nonfiction published in the New York Times, The Observer, The Nation, Cosmo, Interview, and we can go on and on. In fact, many publications in Europe. But what were you writing about, nonfiction?
Mostly for cultural issues up until George magazine started, and John had me write a piece for the first issue of George, a piece in the famous Cindy Crawford issue. And
the very first one, right?
The very first one, a piece on the Bob Dole campaign.
And John?
John Kennedy.
Okay.
John Jr. And after that point, after you start writing about politics, they won't let you write about anything else. So I've been covering politics ever since.
Is that what happened? So, but when did your career actually change? Because you started doing biographies
Yes.
and long essays.
Yes.
And was George the turning point?
Yeah, that was.
Oh, it was.
Yeah.
But then you wrote about James Dean. He wasn't in politics.
All that was before.
It was all before.
All that was
So
before.
McCain and
John Kerry and
all those came after.
I've covered pretty much politics since then. Yeah.
Well, when you wrote about James Dean, was it a book?
1994. Yeah.
So, and how did you get interested in that?
My word,
My word, that's so Southern.
Well, I'm from the South. Just growing up, you look at who your icons are, who the people who inspire you. And Dean was the first to do what he did, to take method acting and sort of go and take that into a whole different direction with obviously Marlon Brando and Kim Stanley and Montgomery Clift. And so of that group, he was the one to me that was the most fascinating. So I wrote a book about him.
So it was called Boulevard
of Broken Dreams.
Mm-hmm. And then you also wrote about Andy Warhol.
Yes, I did.
But was Andy alive when you were writing
No,
that?
I started writing about Warhol after he died because of the controversy that grew up surrounding his estate and foundation. And I'm still covering the story. I mean, that's one of the things that I do keep up with. But again, I have trouble getting people to let me write about it because it's all politics. Once you get into politics, I want you to write about politics.
But Andy's was Death and Disaster.
Yeah.
And that was the name of some of his paintings. Is that why you named that?
Yeah, he did a great series of paintings called Death and Disaster.
Right.
And when I wrote the book about him, that seemed to be a logical choice for a title.
J.D. Salinger.
Yes.
How did that happen? We're going into a little past before we get to Sylvia Plath.
All these books. I get drawn to people who are interesting to me for a variety of reasons. And he was interesting because I thought, what would it be like to write a book about someone who doesn't want you to write a book about him?
Oh, because did you get to...
No, but I sort of stalked him for a while. That's what the writers about him who've written about him do. You go up to New Hampshire, and he lives on the border of New Hampshire and Vermont. You go up there and sort of stake out his place.
Did he have that young wife then?
Yes.
A young person living with a young woman living with him? I don't know if he ever married her.
He has married her now, yeah.
But
since I started working on that book, and it came out, when did that book come out? Like 6 years ago, 7 years ago?
But was she around? Did she help you?
I saw her. No. You can never talk to him or anyone close to him, but you go to the community and you talk to the people who do know him, and that's how you get information about him.
But that was so bizarre from what you're saying and the way she gained access, because she went up as a writer too.
Yes, but I think she went up for a different reason.
Well, is it easier to write about people who are still alive or that are gone?
That's a really good question. If they're gone, you can't go and cover them. The great thing about covering politics is that the person is there. You know, you can go out and hang out with them on the campaign trail. I've written a lot about John Kerry and John McCain and people like that, and you have access to them. You can see what they're thinking right now at this moment in time.
But you still talk to the people around them,
Yeah,
don't you?
to.
You have to do that.
Yeah, you have to
But
make sure
then-
the stories are the same.
And then, well, then what happens if they're gone? How do you make sure those stories are the same? You must have like one person with Andy. You could get 100 different stories about Warhol.
Well, but I was just covering the one story of the controversy surrounding the estate and foundation, and you find out, okay, this. If you talk to enough people, you find out, well, this is what really happened after
You
he died.
deduct it, or you actually can find out?
You can find out.
You can find out.
If you talk to enough people, the stories start being the same, or you get enough pieces of the story together that you can put it together and it makes sense.
That's what I was thinking too. When there were so many stories coming out,
You were in
and I
that
knew
Warhol
Andy.
world.
Yeah, I knew Andy,
Yeah.
and I mean, I was in the house, and I knew what was
Yeah.
under the bed and what was up in the,
Yeah, and,
the canopy, and when it disappears, and I know what he used to wear on his clothes.
Yeah, well, the latest thing they've come up with, they now have an authentication board. So if you owned a Warhol, if he gave you a Warhol, you now have to take it to this board that's administered by the foundation to get approved that this is an authentic Warhol. It doesn't matter if he signed it or if Fred Hughes, his right-hand man, I'm
Right.
sure you knew Fred well.
Of course.
If he had approved it, you have to go to this board now that Vincent Fremont runs. I mean, it's ridiculous.
But Vincent knew Andy at least. The rest
Yeah.
of the board, many people never even knew Andy.
Well,
So there
most
you
people
are.
connected to the foundation
Yeah.
now don't know Andy.
I know. So there we are. We're back to Sylvia Plath and The Edge, which is a play that
Yeah.
you're directing and that you wrote. And it actually came out of the writings of an essay that you edited, right?
I started working on Plath when I edited a book of essays about her work that came out in the mid-'80s, a book called Ariel Ascending.
That's what
and I became interested in sort of her as a historical figure and a biographical figure, and interviewed, did hundreds of interviews with many people, and wrote a biography of her that came out in 1991. That Angelica Torn, the actress Angelica Torn, the daughter of Rip Torn and Geraldine Page, she read, and she came to me and wanted to know if I would write a theater piece.
Oh, first it
based on
started
that.
as the biography,
Right.
and then she saw it.
Right.
Because from what I understand, she says that
You have to
Paul
write.
wrote it for me.
Well, I did. So she came to me and she said, well, you write this theater piece. So I wrote it in 2002. It's a one-woman show. It's a 15,000-word monologue.
Oh, she's on
Spoken
the stage alone?
All alone for 2 hours.
Oh my gosh.
Plus an intermission.
Really?
Yeah, and she's absolutely breathtaking, and it's a remarkable performance to watch.
Well, she has...
But I did write it for her, especially for her, and she's the only person ever to perform it. And we've now done it over 350 times.
Tell
in
me
4
where
different
you've...
countries.
Yeah, where has it been? It's been in England?
It started at the Actors Studio. We developed it at the Actors Studio. She's a lifetime member. Her parents were members. I'm a member. So we started it there. Then we played New York, London, Miami. We played in Texas, New Zealand, Australia,
Right,
back
yes.
to New York, and now in Los Angeles.
And now in Los Angeles, so we're really lucky. Were they
Yes.
all small venues like it's at the Odyssey,
It's at the
right?
Odyssey Theater, which is very intimate, so it's a great space to see it, because we played it in big houses. In Melbourne, we played a 1,000-seat house.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Do you lose it from big to small?
It becomes a different show. It becomes more presentational in a really big space.
But does
at the Odyssey, it's so intimate that you're sort of right up on top
stage.
of it. Absolutely.
It's
a great space.
How do you go to all those places to redirect or to direct?
Well,
What do you call it? I mean,
well,
I don't know.
the show's directed, but then all the spaces are different, so you have to take the show that you've directed and put it in that space. And so you have to make tweaks along the way.
But that's what you have
Yeah.
to do.
Right.
So how does she or how did she pour herself into that role? I mean, did she feel a transformation when she came to you and wanted you to write it?
Yeah, and I'll never forget the first night we did it. We did it at the studio for the board of directors. So, you know, Harvey Keitel was there, and Lee Grant and her father, and everybody was there. And we were she's the only thing on stage, and we don't know if it's any good or not. You know? So the lights come down, and nobody claps for like 20 seconds. And finally, the applause starts, and the lights come up, and she gets this huge standing ovation. You never get a standing ovation at the studio. So her commitment to this part has been there from the beginning. And you rarely ever get to see an actor commit him or herself to a role like this one.
Tell us a little bit about Sylvia Plath.
American writer, poet, and she's the author of The Bell Jar, very famous novel. She died in 1963 at the age of 30, a presumed suicide. And part of what the play explores is the circumstances of her death, to see exactly, was it a suicide? Was she driven to kill herself? Was other people involved in her death?
Were other people, yeah.
And the speculation centers around her late husband now, Ted Hughes, who was the poet laureate of England after she died.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, yeah.
And what his involvement in her death was.
Do you come to a conclusion in your own mind?
Many audience members leave with a conclusion.
They come to their own conclusion. What about Angelica? Did she come to a conclusion?
Yeah.
Is that why she wanted you to write about it?
Yes. Yes. And she had read all the books on Sylvia that had been published before mine, and mine was the first that really spoke to her as an artist. Yeah.
Before we leave, you directed Death and the Maiden.
Yes.
Which was written by someone else.
Yes.
And
Ariel Dorfman.
And
Angelica was in that with Lee Lawson, who was a terrific actor, married to Twiggy, actually.
Oh, so that brought it back. Mm-hmm. She was in that play. Mm-hmm. And then you're writing about Billie Holiday.
I just finished a new script that I wrote and will direct, and we're shooting to do it in New York in the spring off Broadway. And it's a show. I wouldn't say it's a one-woman show because there are other, characters involved, but it's mostly focused on just Billie Holiday.
But it's a musical. Have you ever done musicals before?
It's a play with music.
Oh, is that how you do it? So you don't have to be a musical genius. You just have to be a writing genius.
I went and found 15 great Billie Holiday songs and sort of built the whole show around those songs. So the songs are already there. They're American classics, so it was really easy to do.
Oh, not so easy, Paul.
Actually, it was really hard to do.
That's the truth. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. It's great seeing you again.
Good to see you again, and thank you for watching this part. Don't go away. Rodney Vance will be our next guest. That's great. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn. Welcome back to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Author, screenwriter Rodney Vance was born and raised in Michigan. Always loved to write. He was published when he was 11 years old, his first story. But then he went on to get an MA in religion at Andrews University and an MFA in theater and playwriting at the Catholic University of America. Rodney's been a chaplain, a professor, the head writer of 2 TV series that were award-winning. He's had 7 stage plays produced, and it's easy to keep talking about all these things, Rodney, and then you wrote a book besides that.
I did. It's my first children's book, and it was a lot of fun to work on.
But I see from what you did in the background that this touching story of DeMonte Love must have really grabbed you, because it seems like you went back to your childhood and you went back to his childhood.
It did. DeMonte Love is a true story. It's based on a true story of this 6-year-old boy who rescued or who kept alive 6 younger kids who were separated from their parents in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina. And it was just really good to kind of get back into that world and to celebrate this young kid who's just so amazing in what he did.
These weren't his family. These were just a group of kids.
One of them was his younger brother, and a couple of them were cousins of his, and the others were neighbors.
When you published your first piece at 11, was it anything like this book?
My first piece at age 11 was the story. My family and I were in Tokyo, Japan on vacation, and there was an earthquake. And I wrote about that experience, and it was published in Guide magazine.
Is that right?
Yes, it was.
I was going to ask if your father owned the publication.
No connection.
No,
I just
nothing there?
had a lucky break.
What were you doing in Japan?
We were just on vacation. My parents were living on the island of Guam at the time.
Oh, I see. So it wasn't too far.
Relatively close, only 3,000 miles away.
Not like what we have to go through to get
exactly
there.
right.
So why did you study religion?
To know why things are, what things mean, to learn mythology, the stories.
That was your master's, wasn't it? Was it
Yes.
your master's so
Yes.
that you could go back and I see.
Yeah, the Bible stories are so profound, so rich. And I really wanted to study those far more in depth.
And then you went on, though, to go into screenwriting and theater.
Yes, I went to...
Was there a connection for you there?
Stories.
Stories.
Stories is the connection all the way through. I wanted to learn to work with the plays, with the theatrical form of storytelling, and did that for a time, and then came to Los Angeles to do long-form feature film, and showed a screenplay to a producer who hired me to work with a television series, and that's how I got into that.
That's how you got that? Where were you living at the time before you came to LA?
Washington State.
Okay,
in a little
Washington
town called
State.
Walla Walla.
Were you a chaplain there? Where were you a chaplain?
I was a chaplain at Columbia Union College in Washington, D.C., actually just outside Tacoma Park, Maryland, about a mile outside of the District of Columbia.
And with the school, is that it?
Yes.
With the school? And
Yes.
how'd you get that job? That position, I should say.
When I was in graduate school, getting my MA in religion, I was already interested enough in theater that I started staging plays and things, and the president of the college found out about one of the pieces that I had staged, wanted that at the college, and since my degree was in religion and not in theater, he said, well, why don't you come be our chaplain and do some plays?
You're
so
kidding.
That's how it worked out.
That's so great. Were you a professor there too? Or someplace else?
I taught occasional classes there, but I was full enough with the chaplaincy role and then with doing some plays that I didn't get a chance to teach too much.
Oh, and then, okay, one more thing we have to, what were the plays about? Because 7 plays produced?
The plays are all on a variety of things. One is just a goofy musical called The Man Who Was Kitty Hawk. Another was a very avant-garde piece structurally that I honestly thought would never be performed because it was just too insane. And it was called The Man, the Woman, and the Indian. I've since changed the title to The Closing Wood.
Do they continue?
In Denver.
Do they continue?
No, I haven't been pushing them. So
Oh, so you have to really push your work to get it going?
I do, at least in the world of theater, yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay, so why wasn't DeMonte Love a screenplay or a TV show or something else?
It is a book about a boy, and it just seemed to me as though the right way to tell that story was as a children's book.
As a child. And then what inspired you? Were you in Katrina? Were you
No, I was
down
reading
there?
the newspaper reports and looking at what was happening on television, the
in
same as everyone
Mississippi?
else. Yes, and I was really shocked and moved at what I was seeing, the images coming out of New Orleans,
That's
and wanted
how-
to respond.
That's how it came about?
That's how it came about.
Oh, that's really interesting. So the cover is gorgeous, and let me find this, because the illustrations are simply magnificent.
Thank you.
And who did the illustrations?
Martino Dorsey. He's one of the top watercolor artists out of Haiti, and is also living in Pasadena now, a neighbor of mine. And I showed him the book, the text, and he had been offered several other children's books before then, and this was the first one that he said, yeah, this one I want to do. So he kind of gave us a Haitian flavor to the New Orleans look.
Did he draw each thing to go with your words, or did you collaborate? Did you ask him, like, what part of the book you wanted him to illustrate?
I gave him the text, and I divided it out into how I thought the pages might go, and then he drew the pictures on his own. And then when he was finished with that, we got together, decided there were probably 3 or 4 more additional ones we needed. He finished those out, and we had it.
And how did he actually do it? Did he paint it on cardboard, on paper?
He uses paper about, I don't know, this size, and kind of watercolor and pen and ink. And
did he give you lots of choices, or just
Nope. Each one that he drew is in that book.
You knew? Is that right?
Yes.
Did the inspiration actually for the writing part come out of a religious or spiritual background for you?
Not overtly. I was impressed with a boy who became a hero by doing the good that he could, the good that was right in front of him. And of course there's a spiritual value in that. But I wasn't writing it because of a spiritual theme. That probably just emerged because of who I am.
Did you meet him?
I have not met him. I've talked to him several times, but I have not met him.
Well, how does he react to this all? Has he seen the book?
He's very proud of the book. He takes it, shows it to his friends at school. So yeah, he's very proud of it.
Well, it's enough of a great story that National Public Radio spent a lot of time talking to you. What were some of the key things that they wanted to focus on?
The question that they asked that had never occurred to me to ask before then, Farai Chadai did the interview, and she asked him, did you change any diapers? And being 6 at the time, he answered exactly as a 6-year-old would. He just said no. Absolutely not.
Right.
So yes, I will keep everybody together, I'll hold hands, we'll keep us all alive, that sort of thing, but change a diaper, no, that's just going too far.
That was it, and that's on NPR?
Yes, exactly.
Have you done readings with the book? Have you gone around to different?
We've gone to a number of bookstores, especially Barnes & Noble bookstores, but also some Borders, and there'll be one at Vroman's in Pasadena coming up.
So what, do you actually read from it?
Yes.
And what parts of the book do you take to read?
You know, I usually take the whole book, and usually,
You do?
since it's just a short children's book, I usually take and just sit down and read the book.
And how long does it usually take? Because it's just, you know,
6 or 7 minutes.
when the plane landed in Texas, all the
Yes.
mommies and daddies were there to give each child a hug.
Yes.
And hugs are so important. And then this is the great plane landing, right? Tell us about that.
I'm sorry.
Tell us about this part of it.
That's where the kids get back. Air Charity Network flew the kids for free from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where they were finally taken to be taken care of, and then flew them for free back to their parents, who by then were in San Antonio, Texas. And that's why a significant portion of the proceeds from this book are going not only to DeMonte and his family, but to the Air Charity Network. And of course, they get off the plane, and the moms and the dads are there, and the kids, you know, are just delighted to see mom and dad again after all this separation. And the parents, who were just frantic, not knowing where their kids were so happy to see them.
Yeah, that was the thing. They were all putting names in and calling special headquarters and.
Yeah, the way they got separated is they were up on the roof to avoid the floodwaters, and the helicopter pilot who came only had room to take the kids. So they took the kids and were supposed to come right back for the parents, but they, in the chaos, did not go back for the parents. So the kids were set down in downtown New Orleans and just left.
So we were dealing with Mississippi and Louisiana, weren't we? I mean, there were different states involved.
It was a large event.
And here's the really strong when the waters are coming.
Yes.
And what I can't see what it's, I'm showing it to you, but what does that say underneath it?
3 days and 3 nights and another day went by.
It was like Noah's Ark, right?
Yeah, they were stuck on that roof for quite a while. Yes. And then the helicopter came after that and rescued them from the roof.
Do you see this as being a film or a TV show? Or?
We have had some interest from a producer who is connected with ABC Family, who's interested in doing it potentially as a TV movie. And of course, that has to wait now for any further discussion until after the Writers Guild strike is over.
Oh, right, we have to do that. But what are you doing now? What are you working on next?
I'm working on a story for One of the places that picked this book up is the Seventh-day Adventist school system for their kindergarten.
So what do? They give it. They use it in the school.
Yes,
they
and
read
they've asked
this
me to
in the
write
school?
another book for that as well.
As a follow-up, or about their children, or about what?
They wanted me to do a true story that was a Christmas story set somewhere in the Hispanic culture, and we found a wonderful story out of Colombia, South America, that we're working on right now.
So it's a true story. How do you research something like that? How do you find it? Like this, you watch TV, you said.
Yes, exactly. To find the story out of Colombia, I have a very good friend who's from Colombia. And so I talked to him about it and sent out emails to some other friends and just looked around on the internet. And it was my friend actually who came up with this one and said, "Hey, check out this story." And
It's true, you don't add anything else to it? Can you add your own embellishments?
No, I definitely put my own slant on it. It's based on the facts of the story, but then I want to, some sort of a theme needs to emerge. And of course, you want to give everything an emotional power so that mom or dad reading this to their child will love the book and the child will love the book, and they can talk to their child about what the book means.
And then what kind of illustration? It won't
We
be this again,
We
right?
haven't assigned an illustrator yet, but there's a fellow named Guillaume, I think, out of Colombia.
Oh, someone that's indigenous to the area with
That's
great.
who we're going to ask, I think. We have not yet asked him, so I don't want to imply that he's on the book, but it's the kind of art that we want to do with that book.
So you would like to collaborate. Well, what about screenplays? Don't you have things going on in your mind?
There's a story that I want to do. We have permission for the first time in the history of the U.S. Forest Service to use Smokey Bear as a character.
Really?
On a treatment that I wrote, so we're going to start working on that.
Because he's really a symbol that no one can use, right? And
That's
I mean,
correct.
he's like
That's correct.
He's protected.
That's correct. So we're working on putting that together.
Oh, it was so good to have you, Rodney.
It was great to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you for watching. Keep writing. Email me at jaquinn1@aol.com and keep writing to 777 South Figueroa, 44th floor, Los Angeles 90017. We'll see you next time on the Joan Quinn Profiles. Thank you.